Hello, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to be talking about The Crew Deep Sea Missions. This is this German version of that game, and this is a cooperative trick-taking game for 3 to 5 players. There's a 2-player variant, but it's, I would say, meant for 3 to 5 players. It's a sequel to The Crew, which was a popular game that came out 2 or 3 years ago. And slowly picked up in popularity, and it was really exciting to see people catch on to this really unique trick-taking game. I'm assuming that anybody who would be watching this video would be familiar with the original Crew, so what I want to do is just talk a little bit about the differences between that version and this version, and explain why I think that this would be the one to get if you were only going to get one copy of that going forward. So let me just take a few minutes to show you the changed mission structure, which is really the change in the game, and then I'll come back and give you my overall impressions on the game. So since many people are familiar with the game The Crew, I'm not going to go over all the rules. I will say that the game does come with basically the same deck, except it's underwater themed, so rocket ships, the trump cards, are now submarines in this one, and there's different art on the cards to represent the underwater theme. But otherwise the deck is the same, all the same values, all the same suits as in the original The Crew game. And just like in the original Crew game, whoever is dealt out the 4 trump, which would be, in this case, this player, would be the captain. But where the game difference is in the mission structure. Many of the missions in the logbook, which I only have a German logbook here, but I have a translation that's posted on Board Game Geek. Many of them are going to have this symbol on in the logbook, and what this would be your difficulty level. So, for example, this means that in a 3-player game, which I have set up here, you'll have to draw from these mission cards. Looking at the 3-player mark up here, so this is one interesting thing, is that the game's difficulty will scale based on the number of players, and flip these up until, in this case, we got a total of 8. So here's a 2, so we flip that. This is a 1, so 3. A 2, 4, 5, a 2, 6, 7. So we're at 7, so we'll have to go until we get 1. So here's a 1, 8. So now these would be the missions that would be available for the players to draft. So just to give you an example of some of the missions in here, this player's mission would be I win exactly 2 9s. This is I win the blue 4. I win the pink 1 and the green 7. I win a trick that only contains odd values. And I don't win any trump cards. So those would be the missions that are available. Starting with the captain, they would have to draft one, and each player would take one going around until all the missions are gone. One exception is if you were playing an easy mission and you have 3 players, but maybe you only had 2 missions, a player could pass on taking one of those 2 missions at the start of the game. Then once all the missions are assigned, players will play normally, with each player trying to complete their individual missions by taking tricks, and if they're all completed by the end of the round, the players will go on to the next mission. If they're not, if the players fail, they could either replay with the same mission cards, or they could just draw 8 points worth of new mission cards and attempt it again. So just to show you how different it would be, let's see, here we have a 2, a 3, so that's 5, 6, 7, and we need a 1, so you just keep flipping till you get 1. You don't go over your 8. You just go till you get exactly 8. So down here are the missions. We have I win the yellow 1. I win exactly 1 pink card. I win the pink 9 and the yellow 8. I win 3 tricks in a row. So entirely different missions. So that would be similar. So not all the missions strictly have rules about taking a certain number of cards from this deck, but the majority of them do. There are also some that manipulate how you could communicate. For example, it might say that you could use your communication, but you can't, when you put the card in front of you, indicate whether it's your only card, your high card, or your low card. You can only put it in front of you. Other missions, for example, might give you 2 communication markers to use among all players, so a player could communicate twice in that case. So that would be possible too. So there are lots of twists, like the on the original formula from the original Crew. The big difference, though, is that the missions are more replayable because they're always going to be draw from this deck, and that you always have the option to, if you fail a mission, to draw new cards. Okay, so I hope that that was enough to give players who are familiar with the first Crew game a sense of what's changed in this variation. And The changed mission structure is really what makes this, I think, a superior iteration of the other game. There's maybe a little bit less of the feeling of progression as you work with the same group through the missions that there was in the first game, because even though the missions seem pretty well balanced in terms of how it rates the difficulty, sometimes it's just really easy to get this particular set of cards that you get. Also, sometimes it's impossible to do the cards. You have to look and figure out, are these missions mutually exclusive, and the game says that if that happens you have to just redeal. So that is something that would make this feel like more of an advanced player's version. So a player who could be able to spot those contradictions in the rule cards would likely have played other trick-taking games before. So something that I guess is significant about this version is the mission structure just adds replay value. First of all, I think that's evident in the fact that each mission is largely dictated by the random draws from the cards, and there's something like 120, I don't know the exact number, but there's quite a few of those mission cards in here, so it's not really likely that you're going to be seeing the same sorts of things over and over. And within that deck there's a lot of variety. It's not always just take the 5, take the 4, take the 3, take the 2, take the 1, and so on. There's different ones in there, and what's interesting is, and brings me to the second point, is that those missions are rated in difficulty based on the number of players, and sometimes the mission is easier with 3 players, sometimes the mission's easier with 5 players, and the game takes that into account, which does mean that this scales better than the original The Crew, which was essentially a 4-player game in terms of the tuning of the difficulty for it. And if you played with 3 players it was easier, and if you played with 5 players it was harder. I think they released a second version of that with a slightly tweaked rule book to account for that somewhat, but here it definitely accounts for it. So you can play with from 3 to 5 players and feel like you're still getting a good challenge. So just to give you an example of that, here's a mission that's 4, 5, or 6 for 3, 4, or 5 players, and it's I win all of the 9. So that's much easier to do with 3 players than it is with 5 players all competing for tricks. But in comparison, this one here is 4, 3, 3 for 3, 4, or 5 players. So it's harder at 3 players, and it says I win as many tricks as the captain, and I'm not the captain. So that would be harder to do with fewer players to link up with the captain and winning the exact same number of tricks. So that gives you a sense, I think, of the way that they've thought about the scaling of the difficulty for these missions. And generally speaking, sometimes it's just very difficult to get 2 things together that you get dealt, and sometimes it's very easy. Like if somebody says I win the first trick and I win the last trick, those are usually very easy for 2 different players to do. But other things that, like I win the 2 and I win all the 2s, that would just be impossible. So you do have to kind of look for that. But luckily, like I said, the game does give you an out in that if ever you fail a mission, you could just redeal the cards, and you might get lucky the next time. So because of that, I think that the game has less of a chance of your group hitting a brick wall. Certainly by the end of the missions in The Crew, it could get really punishing. Here you could just keep trying and dealing out cards. You don't have to necessarily do the impossible mission that is stumping your group, and I think that's really terrific. The other thing that I like about this version is that because of the nature of it, where essentially most of the missions are just dealing a certain number of those cards out. Although, like I said, there are ones that mess with the communication or give you an actual time limit to complete the mission or what have you. But because most of the missions are cut from the same cloth in this one, it seems less necessary in this game to me to actually train a player from mission 1 all the way up to like mission 50 as it did in the original game. And I imagine that this is a much better game, and based on my plays, it's a much better game to just pull out with people who you don't intend to go and play all 50 missions with. It's just, you could play a few hands. We did well at 6 difficulty, let's try 10 difficulty without communication, see how we fare there. And you could just bounce around and scale. Almost you don't need the logbook to the same degree as you did in the original, because here you could just scale your difficulty based on that mission deck, and you could just stay at the same difficulty if you feel like you're at a good challenge for your level for your group. And I think that's really terrific, and like I said, that also increases replay value and makes it more of a pick up and play game than the original was. So I would say if you only had one version of the Crew, this would be the one to get. But even if you do have the original Crew, this one is well worth getting. I did get the German version and just had to write out English translations on the cards, and that's worked well enough. But this game will be coming out in America if you speak English within the next few months, and the English language version should be very readily available based on the success of the original game. So, hearty recommendation for the Crew Deep Sea Missions, and thank you for watching.